The Madman! Did you think the card reveals were over for Ashes of Outland? Well, no. There's still some cards to growth. For Druid, we've got Overgrowth. 4 mana, gain 2 empty mana crystals. Well, it certainly looks really good compared to Wild Growth, but Wild Growth wasn't really looking good. For 1 more mana, you gain an extra mana crystal. It's like casting 2 Wild Growths. Do we really need a mana ramp card when you're at 4 mana? Basically, do you need to jump from 4 mana all the way up to 7? That's pretty tricky. I don't believe it's going to fit into Embiggen Druids currently. It is worth mentioning that this card does synergize with the Druid idea of having a few spells that are 0 cost when you're at 7 mana. So you cast this on 4, you ramp up to 7 on the next turn, where you can cast your Bog Beam. 3 mana, deal 3 damage to a minion, costs 0 if you have at least 7 mana crystals. This alongside Ironbark are some of the cards that are rewarding you for getting to 7 mana crystals. You waste a few turns ramping, well, turn 4, and then you catch up with this. This effect is worth 1 mana if you're going off of the Priest Holy Smite, but really about 1.5 mana maybe. So we'll see if that Overgrowth deck takes over. If there are enough big cards in Druid to justify just a hard ramp, and whether or not that deck will be better than the current Embiggen deck. Priest has a few cool cards. We've got Apotheosis, 3 mana, give a minion +2/+3, and lifesteal. If you're going to go off of the trend in buffs, 3 mana should get you +3/+3. This is giving up one of the +1s for lifesteal, which is not a good trade in terms of board control, but an awesome trade in terms of control. Put this on a 4 attack minion and you're getting 6 health each turn you attack. Lifesteal is one of those cards that scales really well the higher attack a minion has, and with Apotheosis you can put it on any minion. It is difficult to imagine a deck like that which is minion based and wants to gain health in the late game, but perhaps? Apotheosis is a little bit similar to Psychsplit in that this requires a new school of thought on how Priest is run. Psychsplit is a 5 mana, give a minion +1/+2, summon a copy of it. This card is actually really, really strong. It is Faceless Manipulator, except across your 2 minions, you're getting +2/+4, because the original gets +1/+2, the copy also gets +1/+2. Incredible value if you just cast it on any basic minion. If you really do the math, if you think a vanilla minion of 5 mana is worth a 5/6, then that means due to the +2/+4 buff, if you're casting this on a 3/2, it's actually worth it. By the way, you can also cast this on an opponent's minion, and while you buff their minion, maybe their minion is so good that you want a copy of it. It's not hard to put something on a 3/2, and if they have death rattles, if they have cool effects, they go off. I think Psychsplit is going to be a key card in some sort of minion-based Priest deck, which tries to stick minions, tries to put buffs on them, maybe uses Apotheosis. Psychsplit's really good with lifesteal also. And to round out the interesting different direction of Priest and their buffs, Renews a 1 mana, restore 3 health, discover a spell. You can compare this with Power Word Shield. Unlike Power Word Shield, you can't give the minion +2 health. Like, you can't give it the buffer, but it can certainly heal for 3, which is more than Powered Shield heals for, and then you discover a spell, which is basically as good as draw a card. And of course, you don't have to play this on a minion, you can play it on yourself. It's a lot like Shield Block from Warrior. Seems like a great card. Shaman Lamb has something kind of similar to Psychsplit. Totemic Reflection is a 3 mana, give a minion +2/+2. If it's a totem, summon a copy of it. So if you just play this on a basic totem, you are giving the 0/2 totem a +2/+2, and then you're summoning a 2/4 alongside it, a copy of the totem. 3 mana 2/4 isn't bad. 3 mana 4/6, that's actually very, very good. So the goal is to play this on a totem, but sometimes you're going to play this on just a minion that you have. Vivid Spores is an interesting shaman card. 4 mana, give your minions death rattle, resummon this minion. So it's basically give your entire board Ancestral Spirit. If you cast it on 2 things that you actually want to Ancestral Spirit, that's incredible value. But does that situation come up very often? Decks that are value-based typically do not run Ancestral Spirit already. And normally you'd probably want to play this on like 1 thing that you really want to get back. If you compare this with Soul of the Forest, Soul of the Forest replaces everything that dies with 2/2s. So on average, if you can get a bunch of minions that are at least 2/2. It's better than Soul of the Forest, but that could be hard. And then, if you want to just hit one minion with it, then you might as well just cast Ancestral Spirit. So Vivid Spores, you can get tremendous value off of this card, but it's tough to think of the situation where you'd want it. For Warlock, there's Unstable Felbolt. 1 mana, deal 3 damage to an enemy minion, and a random friendly one. So I'll start off by saying, yes, that does look bad. It's quite a bit worse than Priest Holy Smite, the new one. However, if you don't have any minions, then it is the same as Holy Smite. And 1 mana, deal 3 damage to an enemy minion isn't bad. It's actually quite good. If you do want to trigger your own death rattles, you can do that. But the place that I see this card run, if it is run, is in control Warlocks, which want to deal 3 damage for 1 mana. And I don't really think that's desirable right now, so probably not going to see a lot of this. Big Demon for Warlocks, 8 mana 5/7 Demon, Enhanced Dreadlord. Taunt, Death Rattle, summon a 5/5 Dreadlord with Lifesteal. So if you add up the stats, the total stats are 10, 12 for 8. Pretty solid. One side has Taunt, one side has Lifesteal. It does look a little bit slow. Could be maybe useful if you were to cheat out demons. Not currently really possible. I just think when you look at this compared with other big cards, it doesn't quite look good enough. And our final class card that I haven't looked at yet, for Warrior, is a really cool one. Imprisoned Gnarg, 1 mana 2/2, dormant for 2 turns. When this awakens, equip a 3/2 axe. I did a little bit of a double take when I saw it, but yes, that is Fire War Axe for 1 mana, and it comes with a 2/2. Just gotta wait 2 turns. And I think that's worth the wait. Probably one of the best 1 costs you could play. Obviously, in accordance to Dormant not being a great top deck and 1 mana cards not being great top decks, this is not a good top deck at all, but it is such an efficient play to make. If you can expect to live for 3 turns, then it is worth playing Imprisoned Gnarg. Basically, any game in which you can play Imprisoned Gnarg and then have at least 3 turns left, that's a good card. Cool, and then we've got a bunch of neutral cards. Blistering Rot, 3 mana 1/2. At the end of your turn, summon a Rot with stats equal to this minion's. If you just play it as a baseline, it's 3 mana for 2 1/2s, total of 2/4 in value. Mediocre, but if you even manage to give this a +1/+1 buff, then it's a 3 mana 2/3, which summons a 2/3, which is 3 mana for 4/6 worth of value, which is actually quite good. Ultimately, though, I don't think this will be a build-around card due to the lack of that many supporting cards. Burrowing Scorpid, 4 mana 5/2, Battlecry, deal 2 damage. If that kills the target, gain stealth. So Flanking Strike deals 3 damage and gets you a 3/3. This deals 2 damage and gets you a 5/2. You would love to use it to kill something with stealth, in which case it's 4 mana, deal 2, and then it's like deal 5 the next turn, so a total of 7 damage, 2 now, and probably 5 next turn. Kind of an interesting one. I feel like this will probably be too slow for the most part for a normal deck. Just interesting filler, I would say. On the topic of interesting filler cards, we've got Disguised Wanderer, 4 mana 3/3 demon with Death Rattle, summon a 9/1 Inquisitor. That's a ridiculous stat line. It's a 4 mana for 12/4 worth of value. And unfortunately for most cards, you want to balance the attack and health. Disguised Wanderer is not in the sweet spot. You can simply kill the Inquisitor for perhaps even a hero power. A lot of hero powers will cause you to take massive damage. Like, for example, if you Demon Hunter kill it for 1 mana, you take 9. But it is very anti-tempo to be able to lose the main part that you're paying for 1 mana. So interesting filler yet again. Probably not worth running. Ethereal Og Merchant, 1 mana 2/1, Battlecry, deal 1 damage to a minion and give it spell damage +1. And let's take a look at the other one while we're reviewing this one. Rocket Og Merchant, 1 mana 2/1, Battlecry, deal 1 damage to a minion and give it rush. And the one we've already looked at, Guardian Og Merchant, 1 mana 2/1, Battlecry, deal 1 damage to a minion and give it Divine Shield. I think out of these 3, the only one that really has a chance of seeing play is Guardian Og Merchant, because giving a minion Divine Shield seems quite a bit better than giving it spell damage or giving it rush. We haven't really seen small minions which give spell damage, so Og Merchant has a bit of utility, but I think spell damage +1 is not very useful overall. And giving your minion rush is pretty useful, but in that case you have to play it alongside another minion that you're about to play, and that's kind of tough. So I don't really see either of those Aug Merchants seeing play. Dolphin Navigator, 4 mana 4/4 Battlecry, give your other Murlocs +1/+1. Did they print this card just so they could put it into Battlegrounds? Maybe. You would have played this card in the old Tip the Scales deck, so if a Murloc deck is around, you'll probably think about running Dolphin Navigator in it. And Paladin did get a few Murlocs, but I'm just really stretching here. Frozen Shadow Weaver, 3 mana 4/3 Battlecry, freeze an enemy. It reminds me of Maiev. So Dormant makes the minion basically frozen for 2 turns, so you're paying 1 less mana and you have 1 less turn of dormantness, of freezingness. Seems reasonable to me, but probably not that useful. I don't think that this card is even good enough to make the cut in Highlander decks, but maybe in aggressive Highlander decks, maybe? Infectious Swirling. Really interesting 1 mana 1/2. After this, damages a minion, turn it into an Infectious Swirling. So obviously the intent of this card is you play it and then you trade it into a big card, basically killing it by reducing it down to a 1/2. It's really hard to think about which deck you would want to run this in though. And control decks often have big cards of their own, so if you use your Infectious Swirling to turn one of your opponent's minions into Infectious Swirling, you'll often have to remove it with another card also, because otherwise they can do the same thing. You play a big minion, if they have an Infectious Swirling and they use their minion, their Swirling, to change yours into a Infectious Swirling. Worth mentioning is that it's really good against Death Rattle cards, but it's a polymorph which requires your opponent not to have an answer to a 2 health minion, which is tough. Rustsworn Cultist, a 4 mana 3/3 Battlecry, give your other minions Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 demon. So we've seen something kind of like this with Shaman's Soul of the Murloc. If you think Soul of the Murloc is worth 2 mana, then this is a 2 mana 3/3 which comes with the Soul of the Murloc for free, which due to bundling makes this a pretty good card. So you might actually see this in token decks. This is actually better than Soul of the Forest, I think. It basically is less high rolly than Soul of the Forest is the way I would think of it. If you're playing Soul of the Forest on 3 minions, in terms of stats, Rustsworn Cultist is the equivalent number of stats, because you lose out on 3/3 worth of stats on the treants, but you gain 3/3 in minion, and typically stats now are better than stats later. So yeah, don't sleep on this even though it looks pretty innocent. Rustsworn Initiate, 2 mana 2/2 with Death Rattle, summon a 1/1 Impcaster with spell damage +1. That's a little bit of an interesting stat line as well. I might be undervaluing spell damage a bit, but it is really tough to get the spell damage when you want it with this card, because your opponent can usually clear the 2 health minion and then clear the 1/1 also, which is a prime target to kill because it has spell damage +1. In terms of pure stats though, Initiate isn't bad, thus making yet another decent filler card. You can see like they tried to squeeze out all the extra value onto a filler card. It's like, well, we could just make a 2 mana 2/2 that summoned a 1/1 when it died, but would anyone play that? No. How about we try to put some extra value onto the 1/1? We'll give it spell damage +1. So I like it, Hearthstone team. I like it, but it's still not good enough, I think. Scavenging Shavar, 6 mana 6/3. Demon, Battlecry, deal 6 damage randomly split among all other minions. So Dynomatic ended up being pretty good. Often you would play Dynomatic either in a mech deck or in a deck where you were a control deck. I could see Scavenging Shavar being the same thing. When you just compare it with the 3/4, it's got 3 more attack and 1 less health. 1 more mana cost to compensate for that, and also 1 more damage. Not bad. I think a reasonable card to think about playing in a control deck. Another solid filler card which is worth considering. When you have to put in 30 unique cards, maybe you look at Shavar. Soulbound Ashtong, 1 mana 1/4. Whenever this minion takes damage, also deal that amount to your hero. Cool, they printed a 1/4 stat line. Of course, a 1/4 stat line would have to have a drawback to it. It's a sticky minion, so if you need something to put buffs on, 4 health for 1 mana can't be beat other ways, really. Look, I know what you're saying when you look at this card and you're like, why would I want to buff a card with this drawback? But the fact is, putting buffs on minions tends to be good because buffs are typically pretty strong. The tough part is making sure that the minions survive until the turn that you can play the buff on it. And a 1 mana 1/4 is definitely something you can Hand of Vidal the next turn. That's all I'm saying. Terrorguard Escapee. Terrorguard Escapee. It's a 3 mana 3/7 demon. Battlecry, summon 3/1/1 huntresses for your opponent. If the huntresses were to trade into your Escapee, then it would be a 3 mana 3/4, which is not very exciting. So you want to play this card if you have some way to efficiently deal with 1/1 opponent minions. Again, interesting filler, probably not worth including in a deck even if you have a good efficient answer to 1/1s, because you're not always going to draw the combo. And this card's payoff isn't that good just if you can deal 1 damage to all enemy minions. But yeah, cool. Use it to ruin the Resurrect Priest's life potential. And we've got Waste Warden. 5 mana 3/3. Battlecry, deal 3 damage to a minion and all others of the same minion type. If Murloc decks ever come up, Waste Warden would be a interesting tech option against it. There's a lot of demons running around, so maybe you play it against a demon heavy deck. I think right now the tribes aren't that big a deal that Waste Warden is important enough, but a interesting tech card for it someday. Worth mentioning is at the very least it's a 5 mana 3/3 deal 3, which is not bad. That's like Flanking Strike, which costs 1 more mana, but it's not that bad. That's all of the cards in Ashes of Outland. Look forward to the star ratings of these cards soon.